authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
And in Turks?
Paul came in.
What happened?
I'm back in an outfit. I'm going to try to do another round. It was really painful. I couldn't have sex.
Why not?
I was extremely sore at this point. Sean tried to lube me up. He said, "You can't take any more dick." I threw the bracelet and said, "You only brought me here to suck dick for you." I was talking, then sat on the steps of a villa.
Did Sean talk?
Yes, he said, "How can you make me look like that in front of Paul?" Sean told me to apologize to Paul. I messaged him and said I was sorry how I acted, that I was really glad he'd come out to see me.
Who told you to do that?
Sean.
What did you write to Sly?
If he could come to Turks. I told him he'd need a passport and vaccination.
What did Sly respond?
I'm willing, but I don't have a vaccination card.
Why did you do this?
To make it up to Sean.
Why did you write this way to Sly and Paul?
I wanted them to feel good, like they were not being used.
Why?
I just do.
What was the love contract in March of 2023?
He asked, how much did I want per month? I said 15 and he said 10.
He started paying your rent?
Yes.
Who is paying your rent now?
Sean.
What else did Sean pay for?
My teeth.
What do you mean?
Sean didn't like my teeth. I got new veneers. He also paid to furnish the house. My allowance just didn't do it. I used 3 credit cards. I had promised him an all-star party.
What's that?
I'd bring the top 3 guys all in the same night.
Why?
I was with my lover and he liked that. I told him, I have to be awake at 8 a.m. Sunday. I said the last time I got sick.
This first text?
He felt hesitation for me about the all-star party. He asked, does your hurt? You're not being straight with me.
The second, a minute later.
He quoted my text asking for help with more furniture for the house.
Here Sean writes, Rico is ready. Who was that?
Maybe the man named Michael. Or wait, maybe it was a role play and Sean was Rico.
You don't know?
I don't.
Why did you send Sean a photo of pink toilet paper?
To show that my period was about to come down, that I needed the night off. Let's postpone.
What did he write back?
You're getting your hair done for nothing. I'm done.
What did you mean movie night was not on my mind? What was that?
We would not have an entertainer. We just watch our own movies of the hotel nights. We called it movie night.
What did you write?
I wrote, why do you talk about father of my child? All because you don't get your way one night and bust a nut?
What did he say back in this voice message?
At this moment, they played a clip of Sean Combs' voice, and it said, I don't have time, baby girl.
How did you interpret that?
Making sure he's happy, including these nights.
How did you respond?
That he always brought up paying for the house. It felt like, I don't know, this guilt trip.
I think this is a good time to break for the day and week.
And that was it for the Sean Diddy Combs trial today. What do you think about Jane's testimony so far? Do you think she wanted to do this or not? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, we just heard more explosive testimony from one of the nymphomaniacs entered into the Diddy trial for the freak-offs, okay? Now, let's stop and sip some tea on that testimony, okay? She did a lot of testifying to, you know, how she was not a victim. Not one time did we hear her say anything about, you know, him making her, him forcing her, however, that he was paying her rent in the upper excessive amount of $10,000 a month. He was supplying her with a lot of drugs, furnishing her home, taking her on, expensive vacations, Turkeys, Greece, Rome, Spain, everywhere, right? And she was the one saying that she was, finding these exotic male erotic escorts, males. And not one time did she say, Sean was the one that was looking for them. She would find them. Maybe, Sean may have some correspondence with them, or however, they were all willing, paid, erotic, escorts. And not one time also in this testimony did we hear her ever say anything along the lines of he would beat on her. Okay, none of the other Jane Does or anyone else, aside from a testimony a couple of weeks back where I believe one of the assistants or someone that works for Diddy said that he slapped her, pulled her hair, did something like that to her. But right now, we haven't heard anyone testify other than Cassie to him abusing them. Everybody else has been willing, very much so loving, wanting to have Diddy essentially pimping for their rent money, their lavish, life that they were living with Diddy. So now we're going to go on to the next explosive testimony from some nymphomaniacs in the Diddy trial. And when you come into the tea chat, remember to like and subscribe. Have your teacups up, ready to be filled. Tanisha Talks Teas is back up with another day of Diddy testimonies. Diddy trial continues. Where are we? We are with, we just had the Jane Doe. The Jane Doe here appears to be a Caucasian girl. Okay, she appears to be a Caucasian. All right. Have we listened to the final testimony of Mia? Let's see. Thank you guys so much for sipping tea with Tanisha tonight.
Before we begin, please be advised that viewer discretion is strongly recommended. None of the content presented here has been exaggerated or taken out of context. These are the exact statements made by the prosecution team, defense team, and Mia on June 2nd, 2025. Some words have been censored to comply with YouTube guidelines.
And I do want to say, a lot of the girls that Diddy were interacting with were all young, impressionable, vulnerable girls in the world. None of them, aside from like Kim Porter, J-Lo, were any women, even Kim Porter, I believe, she was just starting out as a model. She wasn't like in her Naomi Campbell bag at the time yet. So Diddy seems to, encroach on women that he knows he can kind of manipulate financially in that, manner, or however have you. A lot of the girls, just seem to do whatever Diddy, put out for them to do, seemingly for them to believe that they were his girlfriend. I want to drop this tea on all the young women, any women out there that are listening right now. Do what you do, however you feel like selling your soul. Not for nothing. I mean, Diddy had these women sleeping with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different men in a night, back to back to back, on their birthday, for God's sakes. I mean, what woman wants to have a freak off session on their birthday just to please their partner? Unless that's what you're into, do you do what you do? Okay, However, just so you can have your rent paid, your car note paid, your, go on a vacation, however, whatever have you, there's a lot more to life than just, giving yourself to someone because I love my partner. I wanted to always and only please my partner. There are so many other ways that a man can appreciate you, your body, and what you bring to this world than you sleeping with 9, 10 men in the night just to show him, how much you love to please your partner. That shit is insanely crazy. The things that, Diddy proposed his so-called girlfriends, young girls, women in his life would do for him to show him that they cared for him back as well. I mean, y'all need to go to school, get a trade, get a skill, get a career, go to college. You see what I'm saying? Stop wasting your parents' college money on bullshit. Get your lives in order so that you are not someone that wealthy men would prey on. And in a sense, sorry, I've been eating corn nuts. In a sense, use your body for a toilet stool, because that's exactly what Diddy did to those young girls. So we're going to keep those young girls lifted up in prayer and hope that, things in their life turn around for the better the rest of their lives, because so far that is not what it should have been given. Next up, we have Mia on June 2nd. We're going to double back to June 2nd. We're going to finish up with some Mia testimony. Thanks for sipping tea with Tanisha. Let's sip this tea.
What you're about to hear is a voiced-over reading of Mia's testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Source: courtroom reporter at Inner City Press on X.com. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Listen at your own discretion. Show DX1750. Did you work as an assistant to someone?
Maybe 2008 or 2007. I'm not sure.
You had a resume saying you had the ability to multitask and had thick skin.
I'm not sure I wrote that.
That you were able to deal with uncomfortable situations 24/7. At this moment, the prosecution objected, but was overruled. Did you use this as your CV?
Looks like it.
1753-R for admission. You went to James Madison University. It's a well-known institution.
Sure.
Then you were a design assistant.
Yes.
In 2008 to 9, you say you provided round-the-clock support. All personal and professional needs, keeping passport.
Okay, now we have already heard testimony of that, okay, from Mia a week or so back. So now we're going to get into other Diddy news, okay? Let's get into some more Diddy news. What's been going on in the trial since we left off on day 12, okay? We're coming up to day 15 and current. Everything's explosive. We have got, activated snitches and exposed nymphomaniacs. Okay, all over Diddy stuff. Let's see what TMZ's been talking about, y'all. TMZ on Diddy. Thanks for sipping tea with Tanisha. Let's see what's been going on. What's been going on? Diddy trial, damning evidence. What's the damning evidence? I want to know. Who wants to know with Tanisha? Talks tease. Let's see.
Today on TMZ.
Well, the old saying is you don't want to know how the sausage is made, but in the case of one Kylie Jenner, we definitely want to know how the boobs were made.
This fan on...
Not really.
Not a bribe. This is a payment.
Diddy was very concerned that he wanted to make sure that this was the only copy. This was it.
But that obviously isn't what happened.
No.
Cardi B is super happy that she left Offset.
I was gonna end up killing him, seriously, with my own bare hands.
Get over it, Cardi. She's still hung up on him.
She really is.
If I'm Stefan...
So we're getting past all the other hot topics on TMZ to get to the Diddy stuff.
Who killed JFK? Where is Jimmy Hoffa, who is the father of Bigfoot's?
And then tan, and then you're wearing the short shorts. That's a little weird.
Still don't know how the prosecutors got the actual hard drive recording. When they raided the house, did they get it, is my question.
Or the hotel said, yeah, we'll delete it and didn't.
So, what does this mean for Diddy?
This is not a bribe. A bribe is to a public official. This is a payment for silence to private people, security guards at a hotel. It's legal to do this.
Because the deal itself is legal, it doesn't really go toward a RICO. This isn't a criminal enterprise.
So then what's the point of bringing all this up in court?
To show state of mind that he was trying to cover up an illegal act.
If he thought it was legal, if there wasn't anything illegal, nothing to cover up.
Which means it's not looking good for Diddy.
Sabrina Carpenter just released a teaser.
Borderline on this thing.
Things go.
That's great. Except that he was just on that podcast talking about it. So obviously he thinks about it.
But also in these moments, you have to.
Okay, they only said like 2 things about Diddy on that one. Hold on, we're going to get to Diddy shit. Okay.
After sex with these 2 other men, she was feeling sick and she got up and went to the bathroom, says she threw up, and Diddy came into the bathroom and said, "Are you okay?" And he said something to the effect of, "Well, you vomited, you're gonna feel better now." And she's like, "I'm really not feeling all that well." And he says, "Well, you gotta come on, because guy number 3 is waiting in the room." And she had to go back out and have yet another sexual encounter with this 3rd person. Hey everyone, Charles here, and it was the 18th day in Diddy's trial, and Jane is the star on the 18th day because this is one of Diddy's ex-girlfriends who's testifying, and she's testifying under the pseudonym Jane. And probably the key moment in the trial today, this is a quote from the defendant: "Get on your job." And that, you actually heard Diddy's voice in court today. People who were in the court heard that. We're going to explain why that was such an important phrase for the jury to hear and for the jury to hear that audio. So Jane was testifying as she started yesterday. Today she was, the prosecutors were questioning her about her lifestyle with Diddy. We heard her say several times that she was in love with him. This was someone that she viewed as her partner, and that she wanted to make him happy. In fact, they had what she referred to as a love contract. That they had a love contract they signed for 2 years. And why there needed to be a contract? Well, that's because she says Diddy was paying her rent. And in fact, here was something kind of shocking. She said he's still paying her rent. Mind you, he went into, he was arrested back in September, and here she is testifying for the government against him, but she said he is still paying $10,000 a month. That was the agreed upon price in their contract. So she talks about when this contract started. They were in Turks and Caicos, and it was a trip that she thought was going to be just the 2 of them, a nice romantic trip. And she said, turns out that he had also arranged for, and this is her word, an entertainer, a sex worker or escort, to be flown to Turks and Caicos, and they ended up having what Cassie called freak-offs. Jane is referring to as hotel nights. And that went down, and said she was disappointed by that. But again, she wanted to make her man happy. So she talks about, now one of the things that, because she's talking a lot about these hotel nights and these sexual encounters, and she gets into, in some some parts of the testimony today, very graphic detail about what was happening during these hotel nights with other men, multiple men in some instances. But one of the things she talks about is whether or not, what the prosecutors are trying to get to is whether or not she was forced into this. And this was really important. We heard this when Cassie was testifying, and we're going to get it throughout Jane's as well, that the jurors no doubt are listening for, and the prosecutors want to raise instances where it seems that Jane was forced into this, that there was coercion and that she was sex trafficked. And she talks about condoms. She said that the first time it came up was during a night they were in Las Vegas, and that they had an entertainer come over, and she said it out loud, made it clear to Diddy that she wanted this entertainer to wear a condom. And she said that Diddy told her he didn't want to see any rubbers, and that she felt, this is what she said she felt like it was a guilt trip, and so they ended up not using condoms. And that was the way things usually went. She said that there were not condoms involved, but she clearly wanted that. But at some point she didn't.
And that is so disgusting. Like, Diddy is a sickening person, okay? Should he go to prison in the feds for not wanting his so-called freak-off girlfriends to not use protection? No, that's not a crime. However, morally and, just all, around, however you want to look at it, that's disgusting that, Diddy and them are some walking diseases. Diddy and them is walking diseases. They over here freaking off with every, escort prostitute that they could possibly find with no condoms. That is disgusting. That is disgusting. And we're wondering why, we're just saturated with all types of STDs, AIDS and everything.
Because, again, she said she wanted to make Diddy happy. The key part here is, did she ever say it to him? Now, she says during this Vegas trip, she did say she wanted to use condoms, and that they ended up not using them. But the point here is that if she doesn't say it to Diddy, how is he supposed to know that she is doing something she doesn't want to? And if it's just that she felt something, that might not actually get to the point of coercion. He can't tell he's forcing her unless she voices that objection. She said she did in Vegas, so will that one instance be enough? I'm not sure. But as for...
Be enough to what, though? To say that the coercion of Diddy not, wanting her to use a condom while she willingly participated in acts with prostitutes and escorts, that's coercion in a RICO trafficking charge? How? Enough to do what? Because it sounds like she was never beaten, she was never hit. We never have heard her testify to the extent of what Cassie did, or I don't know what the jurors have saw. I don't know. But I know what we have heard so far, and we haven't heard so far that he beat on any woman like he did Cassie or beat Kim Porter.
These hotel nights, she talked about one, and this is one where, to me, it's certainly, if I'm on the jury, this definitely sounds like forcing her into something. She says they had a hotel night. She had sex with not one, but two other men. Diddy was there and involved in certain ways. But after sex with these two other men, she was feeling sick, and she got up and went to the bathroom, says she threw up, and Diddy came into the bathroom and said, "Are you okay?" And he said something to the effect of, "Well, you vomited, you're gonna feel better now." And she's like, "I'm really not feeling all that well." And he says, "Well, you gotta come on, because guy number 3 is waiting in the room." And she had to go back out and have yet another sexual encounter with this third person. I mean, she's describing feeling sick to her stomach. She's saying it was probably because of drugs she was taking. She talked a lot about doing ecstasy before these things just to get in the mood, that she needed this to get in the mood. And she's throwing up in the bathroom, and his concern is, according to her testimony, his only concern is, we got another guy out there, let's go, get back on it. So, let's get to this.
I mean, how much more different is Diddy than, say, a Hugh Hefner? You see what I'm saying? We have heard, I'm watching these stories on the Playboy murders, and I've also watched a lot of things unfold on the Playboy mansion, the Playboy lifestyle. After Hugh Hefner died was really the only time that people were actually really willing to come out about Hugh Hefner, and there was a lot of shit that came out about Hugh Hefner's ass, and we never saw Hugh Hefner on trial for anything, or even going to jail for any fucking thing. I've heard stories about Hugh Hefner sleeping with chihuahuas, sleeping with fucking German shepherds, because he had, you know, fucked everything moving, including men, you know, allegedly underage people. I heard things on this television show about Hugh Hefner where Hugh Hefner had a lot of football players. Allegedly, Bill Cosby was there, other people in celebrity world, and they were raping girls in some pool area or some shit. They were raping girls anally. All types of shit was going on. Not one time did we see Hugh Hefner's ass go to jail. I'm not saying it's right. I know it's very wrong if it's all true. But it seems as if this girl, she knew what it took to please her partner and keep her rent paid. Yeah, she may have said, "Oh my God, I feel so sick, Diddy." Did she say, "Not tonight, Diddy? I can't go on another guy, Diddy. You know, I want to leave, Diddy. Diddy, please don't make me do this anymore." Anything of that nature, because it sounded to me, y'all let me know, sippers, what it sounded like to y'all. Okay. As far as her being unwilling or, you know, saying, "I can't, I gotta go, I want to leave, let's end this now." Diddy's like, "Okay, shit, you threw up, now you should feel a little bit better. Let's get back in here and, you know, keep the party going," type shit. And you know what I'm saying? According to how she knew things rocked and roll with Diddy and her, it was expected of her to know what her role was to play in that moment. She chucked it up. She threw it up. She chucked it up. She swallowed it, and she went back out there and continued to perform for her lover, her partner, because that's all she lived to do, was to please her partner. If that's a sex trafficking victim, she's not saying or claiming to be. That's all I'm saying, sippers. Well, what do y'all hear? Tell me if y'all hear something different.
On your job, quote. And this was a voice message that was played in court. She's describing an argument that she's having with Diddy on the phone, and or they're communicating by phone, and she's saying, you know, "Why are you doing things this way?" They're having an argument, and she's admonishing Diddy for saying something about the father of her child. And during that argument, he leaves, and the prosecutors played this voice message in court. He leaves her a message that says, "I don't have time for this, baby girl. You need to get on your job." And the prosecutors asked Jane what she took that to mean. She said, "I took it to mean I need to go back to making him happy, keeping him happy with these hotel nights, with these sexual encounters, because he is paying my rent."
Exactly.
That her job, she was getting this money that he's paying for her rent, and what she had to do in return was do these sexual encounters with multiple other men. So does that rise to the level of coercion? We're told from our reporter in the courtroom that voice that when you heard Diddy saying that, he sounded annoyed. That he was annoyed that she was arguing with him about something that he clearly felt was nonsense, and what he wanted her to focus on was her job. That really does sound like coercion. And again, it doesn't have to be multiple instances of it. If they can make it clear to the jury that she felt like she was being forced into this, you know, that gets the job done as far as that counts. Now, keep in mind that there was all day, this was just the prosecution questioning Jane. The defense has not gotten to cross-examine her yet. I'm certain that when they do, and it looks like that will happen some point late on Monday, or maybe it won't even start till Tuesday, but once they do, they're absolutely going to hit on this point that you continue to do this. It was your choice to keep taking this $10,000. It was your choice to have him paying your rent. You could have left. She has not mentioned any instances of violence, which we had with Cassie. So you can make the argument with Cassie that she felt intimidated, that if she tried to leave, if she said no, that there would be some violence inflicted upon her. We have not heard that from Jane, and so I would imagine that the defense is going to hit on that. But again, that didn't happen today, so really all the jurors heard were her tales of being, as she's describing it, being forced to do all of these sexual encounters that she didn't want to. She said she loved Sean, that she wanted to make her partner happy, and that's what she was doing, and that's why she was doing it. Will the jury take it that way, or will they start to think, you know, that she had a choice and could have left? You don't have, here's the big difference between Jane and Cassie. The jurors don't have this video in their minds, right? They don't have a hotel beating that's captured on camera. And so it is plausible, you know, in the words of Bill Maher, that they are going to feel like she should have left. We'll see what happens with that next week. But for that reason, and for the jury hearing Diddy's voice saying, "Get on your job," I think you got to say the prosecution was the winner today. And maybe the defense will be able to blunt that once they start cross-examination. But this was a long, long day of testimony from Jane, laying out all the lurid details of their sexual encounters, which she says she didn't want to be in. So got to hand this one to the prosecution. We will see what happens next week. And that started this massive fight where she says Diddy then starts chasing after her. She says that he kicked through a bedroom door, and then she hid in the bathroom, and he kicked down the bathroom door and is going after her. At one point, she goes into a closet, and he is chasing her, grabs her, puts her in a headlock. Hey everybody, Charles here, and welcome to your recap of the 19th day of the Diddy trial. And Jane's testimony continued today with something really explosive, a description of something, and I know this is going to be hard to believe, but at least from the description, that Cassie beating video that we have all seen and we've all been horrified by, with good reason, that beating does not compare to something that Jane described, a fight that she and Diddy got into where they are both punching each other. It is really brutal. We're going to get to that in a moment. But the day started with the mistrial and the judge addressing what we told you happened over the weekend, that Diddy's attorneys had filed for a mistrial, accusing the prosecutors of intentionally putting someone on the stand, that person being Cassie, and having her tell what they believe is a lie about this incident where Diddy allegedly hung Brianna Bongolan over the 17th-story balcony. And the lie they claim in the mistrial filing is that Cassie, when she was on the stand, said that she witnessed this, that she actually saw Diddy do this to Brianna. Well, when Brianna testified, she said that Cassie was home. This happened at Cassie's apartment. Cassie was home, but she did not come out and actually see anything until after Diddy had pulled Brianna back over the balcony and thrown her into some deck furniture. So there is also this text message where Cassie says to Christina Coram, Diddy's chief of staff, says to her, look, I just found out something really shocking that happened. So the fact that she's saying she found it out does not sound like she was there witnessing it. And they believe that this is prejudicing the jury and that you had someone commit perjury. They say, they contend that it is Cassie who lied because Cassie did not actually see this. So we will see what the judge said this morning, that prosecution will get a chance to respond to that, and then he will make his decision on whether there's a mistrial on Tuesday morning. So tomorrow is a big, big day. As for the rest of the day's testimony, once the jury came in, Jane was back on the stand. This is Diddy's ex, who was testifying under that pseudonym. And she talked about being with him on the day that the lawsuit was filed, that Cassie filed the lawsuit. Actually, not being with him on the day the lawsuit was filed, but reading the lawsuit after it had been filed. And remember, it was settled the day after Cassie filed this. She and Diddy reached an agreement, and she got $30 million. But Jane says she was reading the lawsuit, and she told Diddy that it was very upsetting to her because it felt like she was reading her own story. And she said that there were so many things in Cassie's lawsuit that felt like events that she had gone through. And then she also talked about being with him the day the Cassie tape was released, the hotel beating tape was released, and watching the lawyers come in, watching staff members huddle around him, family members huddle around, talking about how they were going to go forward here. She says that she even saw his first draft when he was doing his apology video, what he was going to say. So she talked about all of that. And while it was upsetting, she did say that they were sort of on a break after Cassie's lawsuit, and they finally did come back together around Jane's birthday in February the next year. And she talks about feeling like this was going to be different, this was better, but she ultimately said, yes, there were more hotel nights, as she puts it. Cassie called them freak-offs, she calls them hotel nights, and that this even continued after the raids went down. Now, she says after the raids at Diddy's homes, they would no longer go to hotels, but they would do it at his home or her home. And there was one night in particular that she talked about that was in June of 2024. And this was, actually the date was June 18th. And this is this huge fight that they got into, that just to read her description of this, it sounded to me like, if you've seen the old movie The Shining, when Jack Nicholson is chasing down his wife and breaks through the door with the axe and says, "Here's Johnny." That's what, and I don't mean to laugh about it. In the movie, you can laugh about it, but what Jane described is really horrifying. And she says that they were having a pleasant evening. They showed photos of the dinner that had been laid out. There were candles, and she thought it was going to be a nice romantic night at home. But she said about 30 minutes into this, they had been having some champagne, they had some tequila, and things got a little touchy at first because he had been on a trip to Utah, and Jane said, "Who were you on this trip with?" accused him of being with another woman. And what she was really upset about is that he continues, and she talked about this all day, that he continually would take other women, she believes, on these trips, and she would never go on those trips. She was only really, she felt, there to have these encounters with other men. So she says she confronts him about this and actually called him a pedophile. Said that, she very quickly made it clear she didn't mean that the woman that she was accusing him of being with was under 18, but she was, as she put it, 27 years his junior, not yet able to buy alcohol legally, and she felt like that was like being a pedophile, and that started a huge fight between them. She admits that she pushed his head into the kitchen counter and that when he bent over to tie his shoe and she pushed his head into the kitchen counter, and that started this massive fight where she says Diddy then starts chasing after her. She says that he kicked through a bedroom door, and then she hid in the bathroom, and he kicked down the bathroom door and is going after her. At one point, she goes into a closet, and he is chasing her, grabs her, puts her in a headlock. She finally escapes from this closet, says she manages to change her clothes, and then she runs down the block from her home 6 blocks away and hides behind a wall and stays behind this wall for 2 hours and then goes back to the house. And when she goes back to the house, she says that Diddy is still there and there's more fighting that goes on. She says he eventually kicks through a guest room door. I mean, the way she's describing it, there's no place she can hide, and this fight keeps going on and on and on. Eventually, she ends up going in to take a shower, and she says he comes into the shower. Pants on, she's naked, she's looked in the mirror, she's seen welts developing on her eye, and that he comes into the shower, according to her, slaps her 3 times and tells her to just put some ice on it and leaves her in the shower. It is a horrible, horrible scene that she has painted if it is true. Now, this is her testimony. Again, she's going to be cross-examined tomorrow, and I would imagine there are going to be some challenges from Diddy's team about this story, but it really did just paint this brutal, brutal story from that night. Now, what's interesting, after that night, she does say she goes back to him the next week, and this is a pattern that continues. She says through August, that is when they had their last sexual encounter with another entertainer, as she puts it. Now, her going back and continually going back to him, we heard this with Cassie, and there was all the debate about whether she should have just left him. Now, she's saying she's going back because she loved him, and that's what she, wanted to be with him. But every time she goes back, she says she ends up having another one of these sexual encounters with other men that she didn't really want to have. That's what she's said all along. This is going to be really critical tomorrow when she is cross-examined, because she does admit this as well, that even though she went back to Diddy every time, what would end up happening, and she described at least 2 occasions where they would be together, she would take ecstasy, he would give her either a pill or sometimes it was in liquid form, and that she would then suddenly, in one case, she said she missed one of the entertainers. She turned to Diddy after taking the ecstasy and said, "I miss Paul." And he says, "You want to get him over here?" And he calls up Paul. They get Paul there. There's another time they flew someone in, Don, that she missed. So she is asking him, she's, according to her own testimony, initiating these instances where they are having these sexual encounters, which she said she didn't want to have, but yet she's initiating it. I would think that she's going to say the ecstasy had something to do with that. I don't know, but that is going to be critical when she is cross-examined, because this is really about whether or not Diddy was sex trafficking Jane. This isn't really about the RICO charge so much, as far as we've heard so far. It's not about that. This is about the sex trafficking. It's also about transporting individuals for purposes of prostitution. There have been several times that she has mentioned them doing that, flying people in for these sexual encounters. So the sex trafficking part, though, that's got to be coercion. And there is even a moment where she says that Diddy used the word, and this was in the summer of 2024, that Diddy used the word coercion. She said she didn't want to do a sexual act with one of these men, and then she took the ecstasy, and Diddy asked her, according to her, "Is this coercion?" And interestingly, after he asked that, she still went through with the sexual act with this other man. So cross-examination with Jane is going to be really critical. We will see where that goes. We're also going to find out tomorrow about the mistrial. But Jane certainly has revealed a lot about their relationship that we just had no idea all of this was going on, and going on so late into 2024, just a month before he was arrested. So who are the winners and losers today? The winner is the prosecution. And, you know, as far as the sex trafficking, I think, you know, Jane has certainly painted a picture of every time she's with him, it is purely for those purposes. Now, again, like I said, the big question is going to be, was she willing? Was she doing this willingly? She has said that there are many times she didn't want to do it and felt forced into it, or she was drugged. Although then the question is going to be, was she forced to take the ecstasy? Did she do it willingly? All of that will be cleared up, I hope, once the cross-examination begins. And then, of course, there'll be a redirect. Tomorrow is going to be a huge, huge day. And we are, of course, going to have all of that for you on the website.
All right. So we are sipping tea with Diddy's trial, y'all. What do y'all think? Do y'all think it was willing of the drugs? Do y'all think it was forced? What do y'all think? We're going to keep it moving with some more explosive testimonies and thoughts on the Diddy trial. Let's get into some sidebar.
We have learned a lot more about the complicated
Remember, when y'all come into the chat,
relationship between Sean Diddy Combs and Jane, another alleged victim in this
when
sex
you
trafficking,
come into
racketeering, prostitution
room.
case. From audio tapes to text to payments to Homeland Security searches to extortion to alleged violence. What relationship between Sean Diddy Combs and Jane, another alleged victim in sex trafficking, racketeering, prostitution case. From audio tapes to text to payments to Homeland Security searches to extortion to alleged violence. What exactly happened in court today, and how does it fit into the overall case? Let's talk to our in-court reporter, Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner, to get to the bottom of it. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this ain't
Remember, when y'all come into the chat with your teacups up, drop them down and in the chat. Like and
another
subscribe.
Law and Crime legal alert. If you received Depo-Provera birth control shots and were later diagnosed with a brain or spinal tumor called meningioma, you may be eligible for a lawsuit. That's right. Morgan & Morgan is investigating claims that patients complicated. It's complicated by her messages to Sean Combs. It's complicated by her testimony that she was with Combs basically a few weeks up until his arrest. And you also have to wonder, is it also complicated with what she said today, including new allegations of violence that have changed the trajectory of her testimony? So a lot to get into with what happened today. Let me bring on Elizabeth Milner, Law and Crime's in-court reporter who was there for every minute of the action. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I feel like a large portion of the beginning of the day, for the first few hours, was dedicated to the prosecution asking her to elaborate and explain her reluctance to engage in these sex acts. And it becomes a question of whether or not it was her as a girlfriend or partner who just didn't want to do this, or, as part of a relationship issue, or whether it was a crime. This was non-consensual, a form of force, fraud, or coercion used to induce her into engaging in commercial sex acts with men in all different cities. So, Elizabeth, what was the testimony from the first few hours today about this reluctance?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of text messages that were shown specifically to the jurors and the witness and the parties. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see them in the gallery because of a pre-existing order whenever Jane was to take the stand, and that has been going on since last week. So we haven't been able to see exhibits, I want to say, since last Thursday, but we're hearing these text messages as AUSA Maureen Comey and even Jane herself was kind of reading through a number of these text messages, either from her and Diddy, between herself and the escorts. But as far as just her and Diddy, Diddy goes, right off the bat, as we had started this morning, we see a text message between Jane and Diddy from September 15th of 2023, where Jane was texting Diddy on these different phones because he has more than one phone. And Jane would say, should we start looking for Sunday night flights? And Jane said, love and miss you, mine's forever. And Diddy's responding, send me some SHIT of you being a bad girl. And Jane believed that those messages about her sending him something was for her to send sexually explicit videos to Diddy. And Diddy had responded, when is the earliest you can get here? Jane says that she didn't want to send this particular video, and Diddy said something along the lines of, the F, I'm asking you to do this. I have the phones, and those phones being with the phones that they have of explicit videos together. Diddy said, stop it, don't say no to me. And Jane says, well, I'm traveling with our phone. And Jane says that Diddy would record on his two phones, and then his assistants and staff had easy access to it. So they had this separate phone to record their sexually explicit videos together. And Jane was saying in these messages, that phone doesn't look, and I'm paraphrasing here because they go by so fast when they're kind of saying these out loud. And Jane had said, you're using our vids to get erect with someone else. And Diddy said, bye, I was asking you to send something, good night. Jane says, well, I'm not going to New York, you're texting me so that way you can get erect for somebody else. And Jane says that she saw on a podcast that he was bragging essentially about having sex for 48 hours completely with someone else. And so Diddy had told her that no sex was involved on this trip, where he was going on this podcast with another person, another woman that Diddy was seeing, and just kind of bragging about this. And this 48-hour trip that he was kind of talking about was on a yacht, and that Diddy told her that he was going to take her on this specific trip, and that Jane agreed to do a hotel night after he had promised her to take her on this trip, and that he ended up not taking her on the trip. So it seems like it's kind of going possibly into the prosecution's argument, which they believe it's sex trafficking by fraud, where he was promising her to do these things and then she would comply with it, but then he would end up not taking her out on special dinners or anything like that. And you kind of can see both sides of this, right? Where, okay, is it a crime for a man to lie to you? Not necessarily, but according to the prosecution and their argument, they think because that she was complying and doing these hotel nights, that kind of played into their kind of theory of the case. And so then we see more exhibits, text messages from Jane and Diddy, where Diddy is saying, what happened? I'm sad, what happened? Jane is saying, well, I don't want to be used and locked in a room to fulfill your fantasies. We see we hear about an exhibit from September 16th of that same year of 2023. But this one is a note from Jane's notes app, where she says that she kind of just writes out her feelings similar to diary entries, and then sometimes will kind of copy and paste in them as a text message, where Jane did just that, where she had said, as much as I want to see you, I don't want to be treated like a hoe in a hotel room. And Jane was explaining that she was just writing out her feelings. And so then we hear about more texts between Jane and Diddy, where Jane is saying, I don't want to be used, locked in a hotel room. I'm starting to realize what this is. And Diddy's saying, girl, that was podcast talk. I was alone. I'm tired of your false accusations. I promise on Baby Love, who is his youngest daughter, I didn't have sex. And Jane was saying that wasn't podcast talk, and saying that you made Papa proud. And this was kind of in reference to this podcast where Diddy was kind of talking about this 48 hours of sex, essentially. And Diddy had said, bye, always tripping around me. And so then we kind of see more text exhibits where Jane was saying that she wanted to go back to when they first started dating. She said, I opened Pandora's box. She can't seem to close it. She said, one night of fun turned into our entire relationship. I'm crying as I'm writing this. And Diddy is responding, stop, girl, let's talk. And then he sends her an audio message. And then Diddy can be heard on this particular audio message. So the jury is hearing this. We're hearing this out loud inside the courtroom, where Diddy has kind of this raspy voice, and he's saying that he was sick in bed. The message you sent me, what's the problem? We have an actual open relationship. What's the problem? And that Diddy never brought up kind of her concerns about doing these hotel nights. Instead, he just never talked about it in this particular audio message. And so Diddy ended up calling her on a FaceTime and told her what she wanted to hear. That's what she testified to. And Jane testified, he said a lot of things that I like to hear, that he loves me, that he missed me, that he wanted to see me. And so Jane ended up agreeing to go to New York. And this was a trip to New York in September of 2023, where she thought that she was going just for alone time with her boyfriend. And then what ended up being alone time with her boyfriend actually turned into them messaging Cabral, who was an escort that they had used often in their freak-offs. And then Cabral was flown out from Atlanta, Georgia, over here to New York, and that Jane participated in this freak off with Diddy with Cabral, as Diddy kind of watched, and that was what it ended up happening. And so we saw a lot of text messages where she was really just kind of explaining her frustration as far as why Diddy was treating her this way and making her out to be kind of someone who was only used to fulfill his fantasies, as opposed to the other women that he was kind of taunting out there, kind of to what she was kind of describing in her face a little bit, where she was kind of kept a secret, and that her job essentially was to hire these other men, or to bring these other men for their hotel nights or debauchery nights. And so we saw a lot of text messages from around that time frame where she seemed to be very vocal about voicing her opinion on that she didn't want to do it. But then I think kind of where that area is where maybe it kind of confused the jury is that even afterwards she still did it. And so I feel like when cross-examination eventually happens, that they'll really kind of be like, okay, well, you continue to do this even after you said you didn't want to do this, and you said this, but you did that. And so overall, a lot of text messages were shown that really kind of voiced Jane's opinion about just not wanting to do these hotel nights anymore.
Yeah, I saw there was some reporting where she allegedly said, "I'm not a porn star. These experiences are desensitizing sex for me. It's been 3 years of me having to bleep strangers." There was another, "You pair me up with some random man, any bleep for your own sick sexual." And there were parts where it looked, I mean, I wonder if the jury will accept, was he threatening her directly, indirectly? I mean, I believe there was one message, "You're burning a bridge that you're going to need tomorrow," and we know that financial control is a big part of this, gifts, cash, rent. But I have to tell you, Elizabeth, my jaw hit the floor. I think a big controversial moment, if we're trying to understand whether or not she was a willing participant or consented to this, didn't she write in a text message to Sean Combs that she consented in the videos of these sexual encounters? Because we know, according to her testimony, that Sean Combs have recorded some certain of these sex acts, and he basically said what? That if people look at these videos, they'll see it was consensual. Didn't she agree with that? Or I might be completely wrong.
So Jane was kind of vocalizing just her displeasure of having to do these wild debauchery nights or hotel nights just with other men, that she always wanted to be having sex with her partner, and her partner being Sean Combs. So she messaged Diddy saying that you place these harmful men on me, and Diddy had responded, "Well, talk to God, I'm gonna pray for you, you're burning a bridge that you aren't prepared to pay for." And Jane said that in the text that she knew that she had consented to being on this tape, but she said she was uncomfortable, but she kept doing this because she loved Diddy, and that Diddy kind of even threw in her face that she appeared to be enjoying it. She appeared to be excited even while she was on these freak-off tapes or these sexually explicit videos. And Jane says, "Well, I'm sorry, I want to feel better." And that was in reference to her just feeling uncomfortable throughout this entire process. And so Jane admitted while she was on the stand that she did watch her own freak-off tapes, and she said that I was being high and following a pattern in the majority of these tapes. It was like watching the same show over and over again. And so this was kind of at a point in, I guess, her and Diddy's relationship where she was really just kind of telling him that she didn't want to be doing these hotel nights anymore, and that the videos were kind of thrown back into her face. But it seems like from her perspective, while she was on the stand, I should say, that she didn't feel as comfortable as maybe the video may have portrayed her to look as more comfortable and consenting in this process.
Yeah, I wonder how much the jury is going to wrestle with the idea. Did she vocalize enough her perceived lack of consent? You know, there was a part of it where she talked about in her notes app, she said she was having PTSD, but was that properly communicated to Sean Combs? It's important for a legal analysis. Now, there was another change in her testimony, because she had testified she's having these problems with Sean Combs, right? They're back and forth on this. And then Cassandra Ventura files her lawsuit in November 2023. What was her reaction to Cassie's lawsuit? And what did she communicate to Sean Combs after that lawsuit came out?
And so I will say this about the prosecution when they were kind of laying this out to get eventually to Cassie's lawsuit, is they were kind of showing us piece by piece, month by month, all these text exhibits, or we were hearing about these text exhibits. The jury actually saw them, but just about how Jane was uncomfortable by doing these hotel nights, right? But then we get to Cassie's lawsuit, and I was really kind of surprised to hear Jane's reaction while she was on the stand about Cassie's lawsuit. Because even in reference before, where her and Diddy would get in kind of these verbal spats with one another, where Jane would kind of throw out, "I'm no Gina, I'm no Cassie." And so I thought, okay, well, once we get to Cassie's lawsuit, maybe she didn't have the nicest things to say about Cassie in reference to her lawsuit. But as far as Jane is concerned, it was actually the opposite of what I was initially thinking. So when we get to the part about Cassie's lawsuit, Jane was explaining that it was all over the place. I almost fainted. In fact, I think I did. And then Maureen Comia asked, well, why? And she says, because there were 3 specific pages that were just harrowing. And mind you, when Jane's on the stand, she is very soft-spoken. Sometimes when she's like testifying, I'm just kind of like, oh my goodness, I need to hear you a little bit louder. But she's very soft-spoken when she's on the stand. But Jane was explaining that she read the entire complaint, and that she said these pages resembled my own experience. I was bewildered. I was in shock. I couldn't sleep. It felt like a nightmare. And so the jury was able to see an exhibit of Cassie's lawsuit that was filed on November 16th of 2023. Jane said previously she did meet Cassie a couple times, but in passing. She said it was around the 2015-ish time frame. So that's notably when when Cassie was still with Diddy. And the two had met at a fashion show and at a Father's Day celebration. But the two never spoke outside of just meeting each other in passing years before she had even filed her lawsuit, that being Cassie. But Jane was saying that she had a lot of sympathy. She says, I can't believe I'm reading my own story. And that was in reference to Jane talking about Cassie's lawsuit. And then this is when she's kind of getting emotional on the stand, a little choked up here, where Jane was explaining that she texted Diddy after. So we heard about a text message, this from November 17th of 2023. It was between Jane and it was between Diddy. So that was the day after Cassie had filed her lawsuit, but also the same day that lawsuit was settled, but also the same day the federal government opened their investigation into Diddy. So a lot's kind of going on in that day unknowingly to Jane. But the text from Diddy said, SMH, I'm stressed and sad. We're supposed to be on the same page. Jane said, well, how can we both be on the same page? And then she was saying that she had to go to the doctor. And then Jane, a couple days later on November 19th, she said, I've been crying for 3 days. I feel like I'm reading my own sexual trauma. You recently threw me up in a hotel for days. God woke me up from this sick trauma. And again, I'm paraphrasing here. There was a lot more in this message where Jane was explaining, I feel manipulated. This was sexual exploitation. You knew this was coming. You made me feel gaslit. You made me feel crazy. Because also remember around this time, everyone, Jane was texting Diddy that she was starting to feel very uncomfortable doing these hotel nights and felt like that was the only thing that she was being used for. Then Diddy, a couple days after she had sent that message about crying for 3 days, Diddy said, call me on this phone. It's important. So then there was an exhibit that we heard about. It's from November 19th of 2023. It was a file. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe it's an audio note, it's a voice note, but it was a recording of a phone call. And so you hear Diddy picking up this phone, or at least answering on this phone saying hello. And then it's weird because it kind of sounds like they're in a car. It sounds like they're outside. It was kind of weird to at first initially listen to this. And so I'm trying to write down everything that Diddy is saying to her. And he is saying, I'm sorry you feel this way. I know we can't talk on these phones. I called and reached out to you. Sorry you feel this way. It was some kinky SHIT I thought we both enjoyed. I don't want you to feel this way. I'm not supposed to talk on the phone. And then you can hear Jane saying, I've been crying for 3 days, reading it all for word. But what's interesting, Jesse, is that this was a recorded phone call between Jane and Diddy, but Jane said while she was testifying today, she had no idea she was being recorded. She had no idea. She wasn't the one who hit record. She doesn't know how this particular phone call was recorded, but Diddy's on this recording saying, well, everything we did was mutually together. But I think a big question for me is listening to this audio message. I didn't know if he was talking about Jane or if he was talking specifically about Cassie. And so Jane was saying on this recording, well, I'm just effed up right now. It still bothers me. But then you can hear on this particular audio recording just kind of like, at first I didn't know what that sound was, but then Jane had testified that she heard Diddy writing with a Sharpie and a notepad on this recording. So possibly insinuating that he was taking some notes and writing down what she was saying. And so we hear this on the recording, just kind of the scratching of what she says was like a Sharpie pen onto a notepad. And then Diddy's on this recording saying, well, I'm here to help you. You know what I'm saying? Try and take a deep breath, okay? How can I be there for you? Let's get through this together. This was some kinky fun together. I need you to get some rest, please. And then Jane's on the recording saying, I'm going to pray for you. you. Then Diddy's on the recording saying, call KK if you need me. And Diddy asked if Jane was recording him, which is ironic given the fact that Jane was the one who was unknowingly being recorded on. And so Diddy was saying, Diddy was saying that he can't talk on this phone, and Jane was saying that she had told Diddy that we were just talking about this, that being the sexual traumas that she experienced, and then obviously with Cassie's lawsuit, it really brought out more things. And then Diddy's on this recording saying, well, you bought me the videotape to look at what we do. Can you get some sleep and we'll talk to you later, or later talk to KK. I need your support, please. If you need anything, call. He said, I need your support, please. If you need anything else, call KK. And then Jane and Diddy spoke on the phone that day. We hear another recording from the same day, November 19th of 2023, still same instance where Jane didn't know she was being recorded. And Diddy can be heard on this recording saying, I really need your friendship right now. I called you back to make sure you're breathing. You know, you don't have to worry about nothing else, and nothing else, implying about her rent, her financial situation. And then Diddy said, please pray for me. I'll pray for you. I need your friendship. And so it was kind of interesting to hear this. I mean, you know, for us in the press and the media, we've all heard Diddy's voice. I think for the jurors, I'm always wondering what's going on in their head when they're hearing this recording, because as much as, you know, the defendant was a little animated sometimes prior to the judge kind of admonishing him, you really never hear from him. And so I'm wondering all the time when we hear him through his mouth, through his words, allegedly, I'm always wondering what's kind of going through their mind as they're kind of hearing this. But from what I even saw of them, Jesse, it seemed like they were just kind of listening to all of this listening to this and taking it all in.
Well, I wonder if an argument could be made that will be probably made by the prosecution. He did this purposely because he had consciousness of guilt. He knew the Cassie lawsuit. He knew other people could come forward and say something. And he was basically trying to have her on tape, maybe acting like he didn't know this was being recorded, but having her on tape, taking notes. Everything was consensual. This was just freaky, right? We're all good. You know, I'm here for you. You know, again, that could backfire and be quite problematic in the eyes of the jury. Him recognizing that he needs to get everybody else on the same page to say that nothing bad happened, and that, you know, because he realizes that this could be quite problematic. And it seems to me, because we found out that she was basically with him until weeks before his arrest, she was there for another important event. Didn't she testify that she was there when CNN published the hotel surveillance footage of him purportedly beating up Cassie Ventura, and was also there for his planned response, and was also there I think it came out today, his Instagram apology that he released 2 days after the tape was published by CNN. She was a part of all that, right? She was there for all that.
Yeah, honestly, Jesse, in my notes, when they finally played the apology video that I've been thinking that they were going to play possibly even on day one of trial, I wrote finally, literally, finally with 4 exclamation points, because I'm like, when are they going to show the jury this apology video? But yes, around this time, it was May of 2024, CNN released the video of the Intercontinental Hotel incident, and Jane was explaining that around this time that she was over at Diddy's home in Miami at Two Star Island, and that they were just sleeping. Then one of his sons knocked on the door and said something is happening, and so then Diddy leaves kind of the bedroom area where they were laying down. And then Jane ended up taking kind of her phone out to see what was going on. And she said, well, all I saw was Sean assaulting Cassie in a hotel. And then Jane was explaining that she had watched the video that CNN released, and that what ended up happening is Diddy invited Jane into a huddle where they could kind of, from what she was describing it, as it's kind of like a PR thing. It felt like that they were trying to find a way to kind of get out there in front of this, come up with some type of response, and that response ended up being a social media video. But to me, I thought it was interesting just the amount of planning and the drafts that this particular video went through before it was published on Instagram, and then obviously it's no longer there. But Jane was explaining that they were trying to come up with this very sincere apology post. They didn't play the video at this point, but then Jane was explaining that the next day Diddy showed Jane a draft of what he would say. And the draft, I thought this was pretty interesting, is that Diddy did address Cassie by name. I think when the video was actually released, a lot of us were like, notably, he did not say her name. But there's a reason for that, and I'll get to that in just a second. But Diddy was telling Jane about the Cassie video, and really kind of going in depth about it in June/July of 2024, and was explaining to Jane that Diddy said that this was the only time that Cassie and Diddy had a physical, violent altercation like that, and that Diddy had told Jane that Cassie was actually the hitter in this situation. Obviously, with Cassie's testimony, we know that not to be true, but Jane said that she gave Diddy final feedback on the apology video, and then she went back to LA, and then she saw the apology video, and then we hear the apology video, and the jurors finally see it. It's something that we at Law and Crime have seen a number of times, but I think for the most part, it presumably has been the jurors' first time seeing this video. And so then you hear Diddy say, you know, it's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times of your life. My behavior on that video was disgusting. I had to go to therapy. I had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry. And then Jane said that she didn't feel this apology was genuine, this particular apology video. And then there was a whole objection from the defense. The jury is dismissed. They're given a break. But then we kind of get into why there was an objection by the defense. And so the government came out and they were like, okay, we'll strike the last part of that answer where Jane was saying that she didn't feel like this apology video was genuine in terms of comparing it to the final draft that was posted versus the draft that she saw, where you do hear Cassie's name. I guess we didn't see that draft, nothing like that, but the draft that actually went out to the public didn't mention Cassie by name. But then the defense chimed in about that, and they were like, well, there was talk about naming Cassie by name. Agnifilo told this to Diddy around this time, because Mark Agnifilo was already Diddy's lawyer by this time. He told us in court today, but Mark Agnifilo was the one who was actually like, do not name Cassie in this apology video. Why? Because she's going to be a grand jury witness, and she likely was a grand jury witness around this time frame. And so the defense was like, well, this entire line of questioning is inappropriate. And the government said, well, this is relevant as it's going into kind of what Jane ends up testifying to next as far as Diddy beating her. But the judge said, you know, I do see the relevance if Ms. Comey is talking about state of mind, but then the defense seems kind of like, okay, well, this is like a confidential discussion. This is privileged communication. And so then Maureen Comey was eventually like, okay, we'll strike it because I respect privilege issues. And so the jury was told to disregard that part about the video not appearing genuine. But when the jury came back from the break, they replayed that video once again. And Jane knew that this was in reference to the hotel video that we have now seen in the trial multiple times, and that the next time she saw Diddy after this video was released was not until June 18th of 2024. And from Jane's testimony today, that was a date that she specifically remembers. Just a lot of things happening, and a lot of things did happen according to her testimony. But she said after that apology video was released, kind of in May of 2024, then the next time she saw him was in the next month later, that being in June of 2024 too.
It's fascinating to see what was going on behind the scenes. We had always speculated, did he have any help? Was this planned? Was it spur of the moment? So just taking this testimony, it's fascinating to hear about it. Now, she also testified about being extorted. What happened there?
So what's interesting, Jesse, is this alleged extortion actually happened prior to the May 2020.
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay dipping.